One of the things I want to talk about is kind of controversial, and it felt like I had seen heaven. Inevitably, you're going to make mistakes. Your first draft is going to suck. And it's true. It's really, really true. Writing is very much a mental game. And why I wrote 50,000 words in a month? Fly through the draft when I told myself that I was allowed to write a crap book. If you tell yourself that you cannot write a book, then you're not going to write a book. Hello my lovelies, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I am so glad that you're here. And if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. I love to see your beautiful face. Welcome to the channel where we talk about all things creative, but primarily here we talk about writing. And today I thought it would be a good idea to kind of reflect and talk about some lessons that I have learned and things that I wish I knew before writing my very first book. Because if you did not know, I wrote my very first book last year, and I actually have something to show you guys that I'm really excited about. I did print her out more of as a reward to myself, but also because I really don't want to be on screens as much. And I thought, you know what, if I have my manuscript on paper, it'll cut down on some screen time. So this is her in all of her glory. I did like a little custom cover, and then I put a date on the back. I got spiral bound. This was, if anybody's curious, literally the only place I could find to do this was on a website called lovelies. This is not sponsored or anything. I'm giving them a free little promo. Their website is kind of glitchy though. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Their website is kind of glitchy. It took me a while to get this even processed and everything. It was about $24 USD. I'm very excited. I just wanted to show you guys because I was gonna wait to show you guys until I do like the outlining vlog, but honestly I can't wait anymore. And it's so weird to see my writing. It's 87,000 words, I believe, so it's not super thick, but it's double-sided. So I'm very excited to get into this. Not now, I'm still waiting another week. I'm trying to give myself enough time, like space away, because if you've been watching the other vlogs, you will know that we have been working on a dark fantasy. But enough of side tangents, let's get into today's video. Now, before we get into our topics for today, I do want to have a little bit of a disclaimer. You may or may not know, I have been writing since I was 14 and I'm 18 now, so for about 4 years, but I did not take writing seriously until about a year ago. So I am still fairly new to writing. I am not claiming to be experienced or professional or anything like that. I want you guys to take my advice kind of with a grain of salt. I am very much a believer in that writing advice is not one size fits all. So this video is kind of a thing of take what you need and leave what you don't. Just because I learned something or something works for me does not mean it works for you. You'll understand why I'm saying that, because one of the things I want to talk about is kind of controversial, but it works for me, it might not work for you, and that's completely okay. The reason I wanted to make this video though is because I feel that I have a little bit more of a unique perspective on writing advice, with me being more of on that beginner side, because I feel that a lot of advice you find is people that are years, if not decades, into the writing experience and industry, and I'm still fairly new to it, so I think that I can give maybe more of a unique perspective. Not saying that other writing advice is bad, I just think that maybe I can give a perspective that maybe a lot of people don't see on the internet sometimes. And for reference, I have attempted to write a book, I think about 4 times. I have 3 drafts of different books in the air somewhere, but I've only finished one, which is that draft that you just saw. Just reiterating that I'm still new to this, and I just want to make that clear before we get into any of this. We are actually going to start with the semi-controversial one, and you'll see why I'm saying that. For reference, I wrote that draft from August 26th to December 30th, so it took me roughly around 4 months to complete that draft, which I think is pretty average, maybe on the faster side. I don't know, it really depends. I don't even want to say it's average actually, because I know some people take longer and that's fine. Literally everybody is different. There was a lot of factors on why that happened. Anyways, starting off with number 1, I would say the biggest lesson that I learned and what I wish that I knew months and years prior to trying to write books is that consistency is vital. I know it's very controversial for people to say, oh, you have to write every day. I'm not saying you have to write every day. You don't have to write every day. But what I recommend is that you write consistently. At least that's what worked for me. I was writing at the same time every day, but only on the weekdays. So for me, it works for me to write every day. It may not work for you with your schedule, completely fine. If you only have time to write on Mondays and Wednesdays, that's completely fine. Write on Mondays and Wednesdays. If you write on Mondays and Wednesdays every single week for a month, then you're going to have a lot more progress than if you don't write at all because you're stressing yourself out, because you're thinking, oh, I can't write every day, so why should I write at all? Just saying, consistency is key. consistency. So when I kind of got in a habit of sitting down at the same time, Monday through Friday, and wrote at the same times, my brain started to kind of expect it and almost like subconsciously start to prepare for my writing time. And I found that that's what really helped me. Out of all the advice that I'm going to talk about, that's what solely helped me the most to get my book done, is consistency. And this topic brings us to our next one, which is something is better than nothing. When I sat down to write for those couple of months, I would usually start off with a 15-minute timer. And I would tell myself that if I was really feeling unmotivated, I would just tell myself, okay, you only have to write for 15 minutes. And if you really don't want to write anymore, you don't have to. Even if it's a thing where you only have 15 minutes to write in a day, you can do a lot in 15 minutes. If you set a timer, put some headphones on, and really just lock yourself in that moment, you can get a lot done. You can do a writing sprint in 15 minutes and get a couple hundred words in. Something that I've really learned throughout this process is writing 15 minutes for like 3 days in a row. And even if you're only getting a little bit of work done at a time, those little pieces of work, those paragraphs and sentences, they grow over time into pages, into chapters, and into a novel eventually. And even if you're writing slower, technically, you're still getting something done. And for me, the reason that I prefer to write almost every day is because when I take a day off from my manuscript, it feels a little disconnected, and then it's just harder to get back into it. As we're, let's say on Monday, if I write 200 words on Monday, and then on Tuesday I really don't feel like writing, and maybe I only have 15 minutes, even if those 15 minutes are just spent reading over what I wrote yesterday, or just still doing something in the manuscript, on Wednesday I'm more likely to sit down and write because I interacted with the manuscript. Even if I'm not putting words down, I hope that makes sense. It's just putting time in, even if you're just thinking about your book, even if you're just daydreaming about your book, if you're scrolling on Pinterest and adding more things, if you're just taking time to think about your book and keep yourself in like the mindset of wanting to write and of this project, I found that that was really helpful to me. Overall, consistency and small amounts of time, they can just do so much more than you think. It's little things that make the big picture. I changed my mind about my statement before. I think this one is actually the most important. You do not need to know everything before you start drafting. Hear me out. I am probably the fattest, biggest perfectionist that you will ever meet in your life. I will get into my head and pick apart every single part of my story until it is beat like a dead horse. If you have watched previous vlogs, there was a vlog where I think I said the phrase, I need to get out of my head, like 20 times, purely because I was being a perfectionist and I was hating every single thing that I put on the paper. To expand more on that, my problem was I told myself that I needed to know everything that was going to happen in the book before I started drafting. And the biggest mistake I think I made was that, you know, when you have a certain scene idea, right? Or when you get a book idea, for me, it's usually a certain scene. I would write that idea down, but I wouldn't let myself write it. I wouldn't let myself expand on it. I would only let myself write an outline. And if I could go back, that would be the number one thing that I would change, is to just let myself write a scene or a chapter when I have the idea and it's fresh in my mind, because then I can have that idea down. And then when I'm actually drafting and at that point again, I can pick from that scene. Even if I want to change it, I still have like that whole idea, the whole original idea, instead of just 3 sentences. I might have been able to write like an 1,000-word scene or something. But that's one thing that I'm doing with my new project, is I'm spending a lot more time on the brainstorming section, because with Project Eclipse, oh yeah, by the way, the book that I'm talking about that I wrote last month is Project Eclipse, if you are new here. I was able to completely fly through the draft when I told myself that I was allowed to write a crap book. With me being a huge perfectionist, I had to give myself permission. Like, I physically had to give myself permission to write a bad book. I know this is probably one of the most popular pieces of advice you'll hear on AuthorTube and in the writing community in general, is that your first draft is going to be a mess. The first draft is you telling your story. Your first draft is going to suck. And it's true. It's really, really true. That is very popular writing advice, but I honestly think it's one of the most important ones, because when I really accepted that and put that as my reality, that's when I was able to write like crazy, and why I wrote 50,000 words in a month. Because in December I wrote like 52,000 words, I think it was, because I learned about zero drafts. If you do not know what zero drafts are, you are missing out. Shout out to Anna. She was the one that introduced zero drafts to me, and then I googled it. There's so many blogs about zero drafts, and it felt like I had seen heaven. That's why I am so excited, because with my new book, I'm going to allow myself to do a zero draft. A zero draft, if you don't know, it's the in-between of an outline outline and a first draft. So it's like basically writing your book in short sentences, like really focusing on actions and dialogue, but you're completely like throwing prose out the back door. You're just completely foregoing style and everything. You're literally just writing what is happening, who it's happening to, and that's it. I really wish I had taken the time to do a zero draft for Project Eclipse. I really, really wish I had done that. I think that honestly would have changed a lot about how this draft is. I'm gonna be honest, I am proud of this draft, but there are sections of it that are written very, very poorly, which is fine. It's a mixture of what I identify as a zero draft and a first draft, which means editing me is going to have a lot of fun with this baby. Once again, writing is very much a mental game, and that is where the perfectionism and the imposter syndrome comes in, because you're fighting with yourself constantly. You just have to somehow get the willpower to push those thoughts away. But I'm glad that I wrote that draft, even though I'm not proud of certain parts of it. Well, no, I'm proud of all of it. I'm very proud of my book. Even though I dislike certain parts of that book, of what happens and how it happens and how I wrote it, it doesn't mean that it's a bad book, and it's necessary. It was a necessary part of the process. That's what I'm trying to say. We are starting to lose light, so I'm going to hurry up. Next one is, I wish I had taken more advantage of my creative spurts. Basically, when I got the urge to write a certain chapter, but it was chapters ahead of where I was, and I wouldn't allow myself to do that, I honestly want to see what it's like to write a book in a non-linear way, which I'm probably going to have to with my new book, because my new book is multi-POV, and it's actually recommended that you don't write that linear. So I think that's quite interesting. But I didn't allow myself to jump around. Once again, that was a perfectionist in me. Is like, no, you have to go A to Z. You cannot go from A to C and then back to B and all of this. I was very anal about everything that I did, and I don't want to be that anymore. Especially in the first draft. I'm literally talking about just the beginning stages of a book. Now, editing and all of that, I have no idea how to do that. And that is a future me problem. There will probably be different advice I will give you on that one day. But we're just talking about writing and drafting and the beginning stages, to make that clear. For me, the book idea for Project Eclipse originally came from literally one singular scene, and I did not allow myself to write that scene for weeks. Like, even when I was outlining and stuff, like I said, I wasn't allowing myself to actually write, and I think that really damaged that scene, because when I actually got to that point in the drafting phase, I wasn't feeling that scene. I just wasn't feeling it, because I had anticipated it so much, and then I actually got there and it was just like, oh, I don't really want to write this right now, but I forced myself to, because I was like, well, you have to write it. So that scene is not the best quality. From what I remember, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna reread it back and I'm gonna love it, and I'm gonna be like, wow, I'm the next Shakespeare. There were times though I do appreciate that I did have creative spurts, and I would literally move my plans for the day to the next day so that I can continue writing for the rest of that day, or that I could continue writing for a couple extra hours or something. And I'm very glad that I did that, and I took advantage of creative spurts sometimes. I just wish that I had allowed that creativity to not have so many boundaries. Like I said, I wish I had been able to work in different sections of the book and moved around and just be less anal, like I said, in general. Lastly, this one is a little harsh, but I think it's very important. So as Miss Swift would say, you're on your own, kid. I discovered AuthorTube when I was 14. How to write a book, how to outline a book, how to finish your first draft, everything under the sun. I watched hours of videos. I consumed blogs, articles, podcasts, everything under the sun. But I'm going to tell you, the only way you're going to write a book is to sit down at your computer, grab a notebook, whatever, and actually start writing. I say you're on your own, kid, because you can literally take all the advice in the world, but you have to figure out a book by yourself. Once again, take advice from me, take advice from other people on the internet. That's completely fine, but you're going to eventually find your own methods and find things that work for you specifically. I've been able to take great advice from YouTube and Instagram, Substack, and different blogs and articles, wherever. I've been able to take great advice, but I've had to kind of shape it to myself and who I am as a writer, because every writer is unique. That's why I'm saying you're on your own, kid, because you have to find things out by yourself eventually. You're going to find things out about yourself by writing and actually writing. Even if you have like writer friends and people that are cheerleading you on and everything, those are all great things, but at the end of the day, it is only you and your book. You are on your own. Nobody else can write your book for you, and once you accept that, it is going to help you so much. Once again, I know this is harsh, but it is truthful, and it helped me a lot. I don't know if this is a method somewhere. I wouldn't even call this a method, actually. This is just something that helped me. The thing that really helped me plot my book, actually, was I literally took a blank sheet of letter-size copy paper. I put a straight line like a timeline, and I just wrote the major scenes in. If you see on Instagram, I posted a post of like how I brainstorm, and I put a picture of it on there. It's super simple. I'm not saying this is innovative or something. I'm not saying I came up with this idea. I allowed myself to write major scenes, but then I would take arrows and be like, oh, well, this scene happens here, but then that scene turns into this scene, and it's why because this one. And I kind of just allowed myself to scribble all over a paper. Once again, my inner perfectionism was screaming as I did this because it was messy. When I allowed myself to just kind of break out of a box in a way and really just allow myself to get out of my own head and try something new and do things messily, it was very, very helpful for me. All of this advice has like the same point throughout it, is that inevitably you're going to make mistakes, and that's completely fine. You're going to do things right, you're going to do things wrong. Writing a book is not easy. I will be the first one to tell you that. Everybody on AuthorTube will tell you that it's not easy, but that's what makes it rewarding, because the accomplishment that I felt after doing that draft, because I know how many hours I put into that book, it's so fulfilling. I'm just, honestly, at the end of the day, I'm just so proud of myself, no matter how much I hate that draft. And I know when I read it, I'm going to hate a lot of it. I know I'm going to hate a lot of it. At the end of the day, I'm very proud of myself that I was able to write it. If you're watching this and you've written a book and you've written a draft and maybe you hate it, you should be proud of yourself, because that is a huge accomplishment. Even if you haven't finished a book and maybe you're outlining it and you're stuck at a certain part or something, the fact that you've even gotten that far is really impressive. Like, I want you to know it's really, really impressive, and you should be proud of yourself. I wish I had let myself take more breaks, because sometimes I did see breaks as such a negative thing. I would think, oh my gosh, I'm taking a break, I'm not doing my book justice, I'm a terrible writer because I'm burnt out and I have writer's block and I have all of this stuff and blah blah blah. I think I just needed to, once again, get out of my head, but also just have a positive mindset. As a girl that has crippling anxiety, your mind is very, very powerful, and if you tell yourself that you cannot write a book, then you're not going to write a book. But if you tell yourself that you can write a book, then you're going to write a book. So I'm here to tell you, once you get yourself in the right mindset, I promise you it'll make it easier. With all of that said, I hope some of that was helpful to you. I hope you can take away at least one thing from this video and implement it in your writing journey. Once again, not all writing advice is 100% for you. It's not one size fits all. Don't listen to everything I said, because all of it does not apply to you. Only maybe one thing, or maybe none of it did, and that's completely okay as well. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I want you to leave the sun emoji, because we're feeling positive today, and I believe in you and your book, and I'm proud of you for starting a book, for finishing a book, for wanting to write a book. No matter where you are, maybe you've written 10 books, maybe you've written 20 books, I don't care. I'm proud of you either way. I always forget to say this at the end of my videos. I'm a bad YouTuber, guys, but please subscribe, give this video a thumbs out so that it can be pushed out to more people. I think we're at like 1.5 subscribers now, which is crazy in a year. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary soon, and I have something special planned for us to do that I'm very excited about. But thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!